So as I said, I will focus on flood risk management, but I'm going to touch on three things really that I think are really important. I'm going to initially just give you a very quick overview of the other things that we face as a city. And then what I want to do is try and touch on Leeds as a city and its connection to flood risk management and the impact that that's had very recently, and also what we're doing about it. But I also want to make a point, and I'm very conscious that we're tight on time, I want to make a point about something about people and the importance of knowing why we do what we do. And I think it ties very nicely into some of the things that have been said already. And I said it last night at a flood risk management conference, and I will say it again because I think it's really, really important. Just to touch on here, obviously, as an urbanised city with lots of people in the city centre, we've got to think about a range of risks. And actually, these are not very separate. When you think about heat maps and urban heat zones within a city, actually you think back to the challenge that we had before around the way that we design things and the way we approve planning permission around things. Equally, we can link that to the way that we use water, not just about defending against flood risk, but also about sustainability of water and water as a resource. And what we've got there is just a range of images, not just from Leeds, but it depicts the range of issues that any large urban centre has, and absolutely we've got that in Leeds because we've got ambitions for economic growth, we've got ambitions around housing growth, and all those things need careful planning. And actually we also know that we already face a wide range of climate issues. We know it's happening. We can look across the pond and see what's happening in the Caribbean, we can look into Southeast Asia, or we can reflect on what happened in 2015 in Leeds, and we know it's a very real risk for us. There we go. So very quickly, touching on what I've said there, we've got a huge target for housing growth, and I'll focus on that very quickly, around representing the opportunities that we've got as a city to bring investment into the city, but then also make it a fantastic and passionate place to be and live and work in. And the challenge that brings is that actually we can't just build houses in the way that we might have built them in the past. And we can't just build in places that have already got risks associated with them. And we really need to think about that, and I want to touch on that in the next couple of slides around the way that we make this city more resilient to flooding, but also how we make this city develop in a way that's resilient to lots of different risks and actually maximises its potential. Councillor Blake, in her introduction, touched on the impacts of Boxing Day 2015. I'm sure many of you still have vivid memories of that. I know me and my teams at the council certainly do, and my colleagues back at the Environment Agency. We fully feel the impacts of that as organisations and as people who work for organisations, but as I'll touch on in a minute, actually the reality for many people that were affected by that is still very real today. Many businesses are still affected by that. Whether they've fully recovered, I'm not really sure. They're probably still feeling the impacts of that in their insurance premiums. I know many homeowners are still feeling the impact of that because they can't sell their properties. And we've got a real serious problem on our hand, but I think as a City Council, working very closely, in particular on the schemes I'm going to touch on now with the Environment Agency, we're doing something about that, and we're doing it in quite an innovative and an important way that sets, again, I think, a precedent across the country for the things that Leeds can do to pave the way for the way that we do things going forward. A couple of the figures there I'll gloss over because of time slightly, is that we've got an ongoing, very nearly complete flood scheme in the city centre. It protects around 3,500 homes and businesses. So we're spending £50 million, probably just over that when we've finished, on a very innovative flood scheme. So what we've decided to do there is, yes, we could have built high walls through the city centre, and we could have protected people from flood risk, the likes of which we saw on Boxing Day 2015, but instead what we've tried to do is where we've got raised defences, we've done that in a way that still connects people to the water. And where we've got weirs, we've changed them for innovative movable weirs. So we're in control to an extent of what happens to the city. We've also then, at one location, merged the canal and the river. And what that means is, again, we've just created space for that water. So at the moment, we know we're having to adapt to the risks that we already face. It's not always about reducing that risk or eliminating that risk. Sometimes it's about working with that risk and adapting as we go. What happened as a result of Boxing Day 2015 was that actually we saw that we've got other parts of the city that are very much at risk, at imminent risk. And that allowed us to negotiate with government, secure a very large sum of money on the face of it, but what actually is quite a challenge for us still to deliver a comprehensive catchment-wide flood scheme for the city that will look right up to the headwaters in Malham, and we're making really good progress on that. What we will see is probably most of those interventions will happen in the city still, and it'll be about protecting the city. But what we're going to do again about Leeds leading the way about the way that we do catchment work, where we do work that works with natural processes all the way through the catchment. And phase 2 of the Leeds Flood Alleviation Scheme will do that, and it'll do it in a big way, and I'm really proud to be part of that. I'm sure you can all see the detail on this slide. Well, I thought I'd just put it in there to highlight. This is a snapshot of a drawing of the city centre, and what we've done is a range of interventions. So the headlines are always grabbed by the weirs in the middle of Leeds, and quite rightly, that's very innovative technology. It's the first time that we've used movable weirs for flood risk management purposes in this country. But what we've got here is a range of walls and glass panels and lots of different types of interventions. We've changed windows and doors in buildings because those buildings still need to be there for the businesses that work in that area. So we've had to adapt around the city as it is now, but we're also trying to build defences and infrastructure that allow the city to develop in the future as well. The next slide is this. So this is just a very quick picture of the city centre just upstream of Millennium Bridge at Brewery Wharf, so right in the city centre, where we've got a mix of residential and commercial development. We've used glazed panels, we've used high quality masonry finish, and just downstream from here, if it works. I think I'm just pressing the wrong place, there we go. This is a picture of the ongoing works. It looks a little different to that today, actually. I've seen a time-lapse picture that we have of the weirs, and actually most of the cofferdams that the working areas have been removed today, which is a fantastic achievement for the project, because now you can really see the weirs as they're going to be. The ironic thing for me as a person who's managing a team that are going to move the weirs when we need to is people probably won't even notice because the water will be high and the weirs will move underneath, and actually what we'll see is that we've stopped the rate of rise on the river, and people might not see the difference in that, but it's actually very significant for protecting the city, which is fantastic. Just to emphasise what I said about phase 2, the very small green bit is phase 1. And then the purple line goes all the way up to Malham, where the headwaters of the River Aire are. And what we're trying to do is look at a range of solutions. And I think what we'll also do as part of this scheme is look at our neighbours in Bradford and in Craven in North Yorkshire, and hopefully facilitate, when we talked about collaboration so often throughout the different speeches today, is about collaborating not just on one scheme, but leading the way for lots of other schemes to follow as well. And hopefully, if that means that we can better protect communities all the way through the catchment, bearing in mind that communities all the way through, well, on most river systems in West Yorkshire were affected on Boxing Day, not to mention those affected in places like York. I think that's really important that we don't just look after ourselves, it's about leading the way across the city region. An important thing that we're doing as part of that is that we all have quite a lot of data in our own fields, but it's really important that we don't just focus on flood risk management schemes for the sake of it. So we need to share some of that data and start to collaborate on the things that we can do so that we get the best out of the investment that we've got. A very quick example in East Leeds is that, again, going back to housing, we really need to develop our housing stock. Quite often those sites are very difficult to develop. What we've been able to do in East Leeds is look at a solution to that by actually looking to put in a very large flood scheme that allows lots of those sites to be developed in a much easier, cheaper way. The overall outcome of that is a flood scheme that enables green infrastructure improvement and also enables growth and housing. Every scheme that we do should look like that. And I think we're leading the way in the way that we're doing integrated and collaborative flood schemes.